Hey, what's up, y'all? You are listening to your Mental Matters podcast. I'm your girl, Mo Lu. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. We're back with another episode and a very special guest. We have Pervis Taylor III with us, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know who Pervis is. Um, and I'm going to have Pervis introduce himself in a few seconds because I don't want to butcher anything. Um, Pervis wears many hats. I want to make sure that, he's able to really let you guys know all of the great things that, he's doing out here. Pervis, welcome and introduce yourself to the people.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. Um, what's up, everybody? I am Pervis Taylor III. I am an award-winning life coach, mental health advocate, author of the book Heal Forward, and a speaker. And I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I guess just a little background for people who don't know, me and Pervis actually met recently at a super dope mental health professionals link up.
Yeah.
I like to call it a mixer where, we got to meet other people who are in the field, in the mental health field. And yeah, we were able to connect. And so, I'm excited to just be able to talk to you and get to know you more through this podcast, and also for my listeners, because
Awesome.
I think, I think for sure, like for me, like being able to connect with Black men who are doing the work and who are out here helping is like big for me because there aren't many of you guys. And so, that's why I was like, as soon as, we met and, you expressed wanting to come on the podcast, I was like, oh, for sure. Like, it wasn't even a question as to like, it was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
yeah.
I love it.
Yes. So we're gonna get into it. I have a couple of segments, in every podcast episode, whenever guests come on. I like them to just, participate in. So the first segment is just a check-in. It's currently, how is your mental health?
That's a good question. So my mental health is actually really well right now because I'm in Texas. I flew from New York to Texas to spend time with my mama. My mama asked me to fly home, so I was like, okay, let me fly home. And so I feel very settled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like home for a lot of people is like their safe place. And so I feel very safe right
Dope. Dope.
now.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Yeah, and I think that's just, especially now with it being the holidays, you know I mean, unfortunately not everybody can say
Yeah.
that they have that, but I think it's amazing. And it's beautiful, really, to be able to have a place that you can call home and where you feel safe with
Yeah.
family and stuff like that. So that's great. And I'm happy to hear that. And
Thank you.
so you're welcome. And so, yeah, like, let's just, so, we did the check-in. Let's get into like some of the things that you have going on. Cause just from me reading, I was able to read a little bit about you. From what I got is that you're a life coach. You
Yeah.
also have your master's in psychology
Mhm.
from Columbia University.
Yes,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
you are
And
correct.
okay, cool. And which is amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And basically your purpose, or just the work that you do, really is the helping for profession, specifically for Black men.
Mhm.
And can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, what started you on that journey of wanting to be a helper in that realm?
Well, it was actually my own personal narrative, you know, like I grew up, I'm from Texas, obviously. And I didn't have the best experience growing up. You know, I was definitely bullied. I was depressed as a adolescent, and you know, I struggled with suicide ideation, and you know, people, you know, I dealt with molestation. I experienced a lot of things before I was the age of 18. And in my 20s, I recognized like all of the things that I didn't address and didn't deal with, and how it was showing up in my life, and how depressed and how miserable I was. And I said to myself, I don't want another man to go through that. I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through. If they have to go through it, I want them to navigate through it quicker and with greater ease than I did. And so if I could offer something to help mitigate that, and I knew that I wasn't alone. I know that every man's struggle may not be mine's or my experiences, but I know that there were a lot of men out there struggling. And I knew that if I was brave enough to talk about it, then maybe I could help other people.
Mm, I love that. And that's dope. I think really that's kind of like I was thinking of like that term, the wounded healer.
Yes. Oh my God, that's
Mhm.
crazy. That's in
Yes,
Jungian psychology.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think just that the idea of that, for at least in my opinion, I think is amazing. That's like, almost like a superhero. Like it's like you go through your own stuff, but you're still able to, or you've gone through your own things, but you're still able to turn it around and help somebody else.
You know what's crazy? So in my book, and I'm not trying to push my book, but it's so crazy. I talk about the wounded healer
Mhm.
in my book, and I talk about Batman. So it's
Wow.
crazy that you like. I'm just like, did she read my book? I'm like, this is crazy. But yeah, no, it was just a kinetic moment right now,
Yeah,
where I just felt it in my spirit. But yeah, no, that's the important thing. Is about, you know, wounded but healer,
yeah,
right? So it still doesn't take away from the healing aspect. You may be wounded, but it still doesn't take away from purpose and how
exactly.
amazing you are, right? And I think that's the thing. My point is, regardless of the wound, you still are amazing.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And I think, yeah, I mean, since we kind of naturally, I feel like, got into the book, can you talk to us about the book and like what, how did it come about, you creating a book?
So actually, this is the second book that I've written for Black men. The first
Mhm.
one was called Survival Mode, and what Survival Mode was about was teaching men how to process and deal with their emotions and mental health. Heal Forward is the continuation of how to live your life, how to
Yes.
heal for the life that you want to have. They when they a lot of psychologists say that women heal with the future in mind and men heal with the past in mind. So
Mm.
I wanted men to not stop at just the past, but present and future. I want you to heal for the life that you deserve to have. I want you to flourish. And so Heal Forward is about teaching men how to flourish in their
Yeah.
lives.
I love that. I love it. I love all of it. I think, and I feel like that's so interesting, that point of like men heal with the past in mind, women heal with the future in mind. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it makes sense. In my mind, that does make sense. I could see that, but can you break that down a little bit? Like what
What
does that mean?
It's funny because if you think about a lot of men who are older, they start to reflect over their lives. They start to think about maybe they weren't the best parents. Maybe they did a woman wrong or they did someone wrong and they just want to fix that, right? They just want to make amends for that. And it's funny. I just watched the new Sex in the City. Illustrates it perfectly. So the new Sex in the City, I don't want to give away, but at a will, um, Carrie's husband leaves $1 million towards his ex-wife,
Mm,
and they're like, why would he leave her $1 million, right? And so they start speculating, blah blah blah. Then they realize that was his way of repairing the past because he didn't
mm,
do right by his first wife.
mm.
So that was he healed with the past in mind. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? He
Yes.
wasn't thinking about the future.
Got
And
it.
so that's what I mean by that. Men heal, we heal to fix our mistakes that we're aware of, and we carry them a lot more than people think.
Mm.
And but we don't think past the mistakes, or you know what I mean? We don't think there's a future. So
Right.
you heal just to fix the past, right? And you don't stop there, you continue to heal. And that's the thing. I think a lot of men don't know that you heal for the rest of your life. It's not a moment. Healing isn't linear, but it's continual. And
Mm.
so I wanted men to know that as you mature, as you progress in life, you still should be healing. You still need to know that healing is a part of it, but also the beautiful life is a part of that as well. And this book teaches you how to do that, how to heal so you can flourish, how to heal so you can have better relationships with others, but also a relationship with yourself.
Hmm. Love that. Love that. I'm like, I got a couple men in mind right now that I want to give. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I haven't read the book, but I'm like, I want
Yeah,
to read it for myself. I definitely want to pass it along, because it's so necessary. And I think I just love this, I guess, time that we're in. I don't want to say it's like a
yeah.
phase, but I think this time of like, um,
We're open.
awakening.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
open.
And
We're open to having conversations.
yes, absolutely. Like I can't tell you the amount of conversations I've had with different men in my life, or different men that I've come across that, have talked about therapy or have started opening up about their traumas. And I'm like,
Right.
I love it. I'm here for it. So,
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I think the thing that my only pause is, I think for a lot of people, we don't know that healing is messy.
yep.
You know what I mean? That you know that, like, healing can be very painful, and a lot of us like to run away from pain.
Hmm.
And the thing that I want to make clear is that I don't try to make healing sexy, right? I don't try to glamorize it. I tell you it's ugly. It's
Hmm.
some days you don't want to do it. It's some days you don't want to face things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's the thing. We having a conversation, but I really want us to really talk about the nuts and bolts of it. It can be
Yeah.
very, very ugly.
Yeah.
Sitting in a cesspool,
Hmm.
right? And working through the cesspool to try to get to the drain so you can, you know what I mean? So you can
Yeah.
remove the plug so it can drain, right?
Yep.
And that's really what it is. And I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I'm happy that, especially around Black men, but I really want us to really get to the point of like the real grittiness of it.
Hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that. I know I'm thinking about my own, the first time I went to therapy, I didn't necessarily know what to expect, because I think that's the other part of it too. Like, yes, some people, um, people in general, but Black men, since I feel like we're on the topic of talking about Black men,
Yeah.
there it's either a thing where I feel like sometimes maybe they don't want to deal with the pain, sit in the messiness or the quote unquote, cesspool or craziness or whatever. But there's
Yeah.
also this, like, I guess, fear of the unknown. Like, okay, like, what am I
Yeah.
walking into? Is this, because there's a level of vulnerability and transparency that a lot of men in my life that I know have a hard time being vulnerable. Like, it takes, a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and then a lot of brothers don't have necessarily the language or the lexicon to even express their vulnerability. So
Yeah.
it's like we even got to get to that space to help them to
Hmm.
develop and cultivate language around their experiences. And so that's the challenge. So it's like it's very layered, it's very complex. So it's not only just the vulnerability aspect, it's also how do I even disseminate my vulnerability?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And who can I disseminate it around? Who can I be safe around to even try to attempt, right?
Right.
And so then get into a space with a therapist who you don't know, and they may not even, and you're thinking already preconceived notions that they may judge you, they may not understand, they may think you're really, you know what I mean? Like whatever we think when going into therapy, because when I went to therapy, my first experience going to therapy, I was so like exhausted with my life. I
Mm.
didn't even think about them judging me. I just need to get
Hmm.
this off me, right?
Right.
But I'm
Right.
different, right? So a lot of men have a stronger bandwidth for suppression.
Mm.
I don't necessarily have that. And I think this generation that we're in right now, they don't have it either. Hence why we have these alarming suicide rates, right? But I
Yeah.
think it's really more so this space of just like who's safe? Who can I be my most authentic self around? Who can I be my most fragile self around? And so I
Right.
think that's really the space.
Absolutely. And I think the point that you made too, with just talking about your own experience, where you got to the point where you were exhausted, I feel like a lot of men do that too, where it's like, I guess waiting until, not to say that that's what you were doing, you were waiting until you
Right.
couldn't take it anymore, but there's some men that is like, I guess they would have to get to that breaking point per se to be like, you know what,
Yeah.
now I don't have a choice, or now I should go because, and that's what, like you mentioned, like the suicide ideations,
Yeah.
the suicidality, like it's
Yeah.
higher, at least from the statistics that I've read, it's higher in men, I feel like, because of this.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so crazy, particularly in Black people, at one point we weren't even considered in suicide rates.
Mm.
Black people, we weren't even really considered in suicide rates. And so it's crazy that nationally, suicides are down, but they've increased in brown and Black.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's like I don't want a brother to get to a space where he's exhausted, right? Because if a man say he's tired, that's not good, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so we want to get to a space where we teach men, we create spaces for men to be vulnerable and teach them that transparency can be powerful, vulnerability is a strength. When we start having the dialogue early, and so we help them to understand that your healing is in your words. That's what therapy is, an exchange of words. It's healing. Only what you confess can be healed. And so
Right.
once we teach them the benefits of it, they're prone to like go investigate to see what it is. And they don't have to necessarily get to the point of exhaustion. So
Right.
that's the thing that I'm loving right now is the conversation that's being had, because now our brothers are now curious about what is therapy, right? But
Yeah.
now I want brothers to get to a space of like, I really want you to be gritty with your therapy though. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
tell the real raw truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the space I'm trying to get them to. Like, I don't want you to just
Mm-hmm.
say like, yo, I can't commit in relationships or I did this girl wrong. I want you to get to the space of why
Yeah.
you can't commit. I want you to get to the space of who hurt you when you was 5 years old. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
want you to get to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I know I was reading too, just from, some the stuff that I was reading about you is that you've had some experience in school, like with the Board of Education, you've been able to go in schools
Mm-hmm.
and speak. And so with the Black men that you've encountered and have spoken to, what are some of the things that you speak to them about or teach them or speak? Yeah, like if you can.
So really, in the schools in CUNY system, one of the things that I'm big on is emotional intelligence. And the
Mhm.
reason why I'm so big on emotional intelligence is because the basis of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Then it's self-regulation or self-management.
Mhm.
So many people, not even just men, so many of us aren't self-aware. We're not aware of how we show up in the world. We're not aware of even the emotions we feel. And
Yes.
so my thing is to teach men to sit with themselves. The only way you can be self-aware is to be introspective from an honest lens, not from the lens that makes you look good, but from an honest lens, but not a judgmental lens, but an honest lens.
Yeah.
And so I teach men to be introspective, young men to be introspective. Ask yourself questions out of curiosity. Really be honest with yourself. That's how you start to get to a space where you're able to self-regulate. You're able to control your emotions. You're able to identify the emotions that you're experiencing, and you're able to process them. So
Mm.
that's the work that I do. Is really about teaching them how to master themselves emotionally.
Yeah.
That's the space.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, I think emotional intelligence, as you were talking about that too, it made me think of Mac, like my last episode. And that's how me and Purvis met too. It was Mac, and Mac was one of the hosts of this event.
Yeah.
But yeah, for my listeners, Mac, who was the couples therapist on my last episode, we had a conversation about relationships on the last episode, and we talked a lot about emotional intelligence, which I think is big, like especially if we're talking about like interpersonal, even it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be romantic, just interpersonal relationships, friendships. Like being emotionally intelligent is so like vital, and I feel like a lot of people just don't have it. A lot of people don't have it,
Yeah.
and it's like sometimes I feel like the older I've gotten, the more I'm like, because I mean, I guess because like when you're younger, maybe you're not paying attention, that much,
You don't
but
have to. You
you
don't
don't
have
have
to. But
to.
now, but now, pandemic wise,
Yes.
right? The pandemic happened. Everybody got to face themselves now.
Yes. Yep.
You see what I'm saying? And
Yep.
so, like, to your point, relationally, a lot of people don't even know the emotions that they're experiencing. They don't even know that they're, the reason why they talk to people a certain way is because something that happened to them previously, and they didn't know the emotion triggers something within them, or they don't even know the emotion that they're experiencing. And so, like, it's so deep. And
Yeah.
so, like, the reason the foundation of emotional intelligence is self
Mm,
before anybody else. So it's self, then it's relationship. So the
yeah.
first two tenets are self-management, self-awareness, self-management, then social awareness and relationship management. You see
Mm,
what I'm saying? So like that's the foundation is you
yep.
before you even get to the relationship.
Absolutely. Love that. gem dropping over here. Are y'all listening? Because yeah, no, absolutely. This is so good so far. I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much
Yeah.
more. Let's do it.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yes. So, okay. So there was a quote that I saw when I was reading, about you. This was like a verbatim quote. I'm going to read it. And then just to ask you at the time when if you could elaborate, more. So this quote says, I knew the power of mental health when I found myself in a crisis of the soul, spirit, and mind. So yeah, I feel like this is a powerful quote. That's the reason why I kind of like wrote it down and was like, you know what, I want to ask you about this. And
Yeah.
yeah, like
I know exactly. It came to my mind
mhm,
when you're reading it. So I was at a impasse, right? Because I do believe in Jesus. I believe in God. I believe in the power of prayer and all those things. And I think the biggest barrier for me at the time was I just thought that I could just pray everything away. I thought that I could just pray my way through it. And I do believe prayer is real and powerful. I really do.
mhm,
But I also the thought came to me, I was like, well, if God made doctors and lawyers, he also made therapists,
yeah,
you know? So it was like just this revelation, like, no, I can do both. And I think for me, that's when I recognized like there's a part I do, but there's a part that God plays, right? But I do think there's a significant part that we play.
mhm,
And I recognize that I'm responsible for my mental health. And so like I think it was an empowering place for me when I made that quote. I was like, oh, I get to say so. I
yeah,
am in control. I have some power in this situation. And I think that was the thing. It's like when it comes to our mental health, I want us to always be empowered. Now there's certain things that are people are born with, you know what I mean? Like some people are, their brains, the receptors don't connect and all those things like that. Like the pathways aren't always there. But for the most part, we're empowered. We are the architect of our lives. And so, that quote to me was just like I understood the power of it.
yeah,
It was very empowering for me.
absolutely. I love that. And I feel like that quote too resonated with me when I read it because I was like, yeah, I'm also like a believer. I grew up
Yeah.
in a Christian household. Um, got baptized when I was 14, 15. And
Yeah.
then I've been on my own.
Same.
Yes, yes. And I've
Yeah.
been on my own spiritual journey since, like
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that upbringing because I feel like it kind of set the tone for just some of
Yeah.
my moral beliefs and like,
Absolutely.
just who I am now. But I think like I definitely feel like I got to like a crossroads where I felt conflicted at one point in my life. And I feel like everybody, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody. I don't make a generalization, but I mean, I feel like, at some point, everybody might have to, come to that point, whether it's young people growing up, even
Yeah.
in maybe in adulthood, you get there later on where there might be some, conflicting feelings and beliefs that people may,
Absolutely.
well, speaking for myself, I had that experience where I did feel conflicted, right? Or at least just when I read the quote, that's what kind of came to my mind, like my own personal experience with feeling conflicted with like feelings and emotions,
Yeah.
having a lot of anxiety for some reason in church, and then like feeling like, just different things. That was
Yeah.
my experience. Somebody else's might be different, but I know like I had to take a step back and really try to think through like why I was feeling this way um around church, like somewhere that I've known my whole life and stuff like that. And
Right.
I had to go through my own journey, and eventually
Right.
now I'm in a good place where it's like, of course, God, I'm forever gonna you know stand 10
Yeah.
toes with God. And but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sometimes, and I think this is something that some people may have experienced too, which I feel like the religiosity sometimes
Yeah.
of it, um which I like to call it the man-made like
Yeah.
structure of
Yeah.
church, can sometimes conflict and create anxiety and just feelings that like it was never intended to be in the beginning.
Right. And it causes so much more pain
Right.
than it does, for healing. right?
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, I was just like, religion always robs a religious mindset, not religion, but religious mindsets or dogma can
Yeah.
rob you of the healing that you actually need. And
Yes.
and to your point, it's like it was like a liberation for me. Like I'm Jesus 10 toes all day. But also I recognize that I had to go through that space to really have even more gratitude for God.
Yes. Yep.
You understand what I'm saying? Like it made me more grateful because I was like, oh, he put this in me. I needed to know my bandwidth. I needed to know what I was made of. I needed to know that I can make it through things because that's really what life is about. Life is about arriving at new levels, right? And every time you arrive at a new level, there's challenges. And you gotta
Yeah.
work, you gotta fight and push your way through those challenges, whether they be mentally, whether they be actual relationships, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
It's about the expansion. And so for me, it was like I understood the power of mental health in that moment when I recognized that, oh, I'm responsible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Responsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that so much. And I think a lot of people, it's relatable, specifically in the Black community. This
Absolutely.
this idea of like, you know, because some people feel like for forever, the Black community is like prayed away, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And mental health not being talked about enough, which I feel like the fact because mental health is growing more so like globally, like the conversation more so, and like
Yeah.
some of the stigma is being removed. There's still stigma there, but some of it is, the onion, the layers of the onion is being pulled back.
Yeah. And
I
everything
think
is not a demon, and everything is not a demon. Like, I
right.
tell people, I said, if you look under a MRI scan of a person who has bipolar, right, their brain looks different.
Hmm.
It does. And
Hmm.
it's like they were born like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's like everything isn't a demon. Everything isn't always what we think it is. It's just like some people, they just have to learn how to cope. We have to learn how to navigate and deal with where we are. And even still, a person who has bipolar disorder is still responsible. They got to
Yeah.
take their meds. They got to go to therapy. They got to have coping mechanisms. They got to have a routine. Like they're still responsible. So even if you have that, at the end of the day, we're responsible for our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that was good. All of that was good. Um, yes. And so, um, yeah, can you well, I mean, we touched on the book a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want people to know about this book? And like, where can they get it? Like, I want to make sure we give, time for that.
You know, it's funny, I met a man who just read my book. I was speaking at a conference and he came up to me, he was like, how were you able to be so transparent? Like he kept saying to me, like, yo, you're so transparent in the book. And I said there's even more I could have shared. But I recognize that if transparency creates an environment for sharing.
Yeah.
If I let go of my ego
Hmm.
and my man code, and just kind of just let it be what it's going to be, I know that I am inviting other men or even women or whoever reads the book to do the same,
Yeah.
right? To share, to just really, um, just bring light to our fragilities. And
Mm.
that's really what I want the book for you to be able to be comfortable with your fragility, but also to know that you can flourish in spite of your fragilities, in spite of the things that you've been through. Like that's the biggest takeaway that I want people to have from the book, is that you can heal forward towards the life that you want.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can
absolutely.
get it on Amazon. You can
I was
get it
about
on Amazon.
yeah,
Amazon
okay.
is our friend. We love Amazon.
We do. We do. Amazon got everything. Listen, I know y'all was on there Christmas shopping and doing all of that. Make sure y'all go get the book.
Yes. Get that book,
um,
heal forward.
yes, absolutely. And thank you. Just our final segment, which I love to include in every episode. It's the affirmation segment. So like what is an affirmation that you live by? Or a quote, it could be affirmation, a quote, a scripture that helps you or has helped you in like your low moments when you were down, and have lifted you up.
And I share this all the time. Life happens to us, but life happens from us.
Mm,
And the reason why I say that is like there's a lot of life that's happened to me that I didn't like.
Yeah.
But when I think about the life that happened from me, I think about coming from Lancaster, Texas, to being a Columbia graduate, to speaking internationally, to selling books internationally, being on TV. This little country boy, the life that came from him is more powerful than the life that happened to him.
Mm.
And I think when you think about the life that happens from you, you're always going to feel empowered. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying you ignore the life that happens to you, because that needs to be addressed.
Right.
But also what I'm saying is don't ignore the life that's happening from you, and that life can happen from you, regardless of what's happened to you in life.
I love that. I love that. Ooh. I feel like we should end it right here. I got so much more though. I'm like, we can keep it going. But yeah, no, I love that. Life happens from you. I love it. And yeah, just well, no, before that, I have a question, which I always ask whenever I have a black man on the podcast. I always want to know, what are things that Black women can do? Being that I'm a Black woman, I want to know this personally, just so that I can be better. But, I think this could help other Black women as well. What are things that Black women can do to better support, help, and encourage Black men in their journey with mental health?
Whew. When you're listening, people can tell, and this just as a woman, as a human being, people can tell how you're listening to them. If you're listening to them judgmentally, you're listening to them lovingly, people can tell. I would offer to a Black woman, I would say, listen lovingly and not judgmentally, no matter what a man shares with you. Because I think that's the thing, is like, I think we all are subject to toxic masculinity. Women subscribe to it, women and men subscribe to it, right? And I think there's a thing that we have in our mind that men, emotions are feminine and things like that. Whatever it is, if a man is being fragile in front of you, listen non-judgmentally, listen lovingly, and also recognize that he's a human being first, who's having an experience. So no matter what the experience may be, if he trusts you enough to share his fragility with you, take that as an honor. And the purpose of a safe space is for a person to leave with their dignity still intact. So the way that he leaves with his dignity still intact is for you to listen non-judgmentally, listen lovingly, and just be there and see him as a human being.
Love it. That was great. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for all that you shared. I'm like, I have so much more that we could talk about. We could talk off camera though. Like
we can talk off camera, yeah.
Right. But yes, please let the people know where they could find you. Let the listeners know where they could find you. And just, links, anything that you want to share.
You can follow me at Pervis Taylor, PervisTaylor, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My website is pervistaylor.com, and I think that's it. I'm on TikTok too.
Okay,
Pervis Taylor 3. Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
And we are out, guys. Your Mental Matters podcast. Do all the stuff, like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. And thank you guys for tuning in. We are out.